Hello and welcome to the Stiles Council. Joining me on my virtual left is the only man I know who is possibly as big an England fan as me, Christopher Nee. How are you, Chris?
Hello, David. Yes, I am a big England fan. How are you?
Good. Not too bad at all. Scale of 1 to 10, where is your World Cup excitement right this very minute?
I'll
be honest, start of the week, I was about a 6, but then I don't know if you saw, we have had some dates for when we are going to get stickers and when we are going to have an album.
Yes.
And that just the announcements of those dates has immediately pushed me up to a 15.
Yeah, I don't have a spare £2,000 to do the stickers, but something else has happened this week that we'll talk about in this show that has made me move from a 6 to an 8.5.
Yeah, well, let's crack straight on with what we loosely call our news section. And that's some quite, in a World Cup year, what constitutes for me, Chris, big news. And that is we have the New England kits from Nike.
We have the kits.
Yeah. It's always a bit of a moment for me, this, before any tournament, because I am an absolute mug. I will buy a home or away shirt for definite. I always do. Can't help myself. There is an added level for me now because I have a daughter, and the last the Euros was the first time I actually bought her an England kit as well. So I will be buying her an England kit for this World Cup, and I have to say on these new kits, I quite like them, to say the very least. But I'm going to let you go first on this one, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, the England World Cup kit revealed this week to everybody except Neil Custis. I think actually my favourite thing about it, and it's not the first time that's happened with England kits, is actually the typography design on it, which is a little bit dorky. But the kits themselves, I much prefer one to the other. The home kit, I love the idea. It's nice and simple. It's a really clean white shirt. The red touch and the St George's cross around the collar is really smart. But I'm not that keen on the execution of it. Now, I haven't seen it in the flesh yet, which may make all the difference. But on the white kit, I'm not that bothered about the detailed texture of the shirt. The plunge collar isn't really to my taste. I don't think the England players have the cleavage for it, frankly. And I think it might just be the photography, but the home kit just seems to sit a little bit weird on some of them. It looks like the kind of thing that a posh bloke wears on safari. But I'm willing to reserve judgment. But I think I've made my decision already, and that's the away kit, which it seems to share some of those negatives, but they seem less noticeable on the kind of more two-tone red shirt.
Yeah. Before we go into the shirts themselves in detail, there's an elephant in the room, right? And the elephant in the room is that some of the training kit is better than the actual first team shirts, and there's no getting away from that.
Not just
particular.
Better. It's stunning.
And it's the first time. I mean, I'm not a big one for training kit, and I mean that with my own football club, Brighton and Hove Albion. I rarely bother with a Brighton shirt, but I get Bo one, my daughter. I'm not a big training kit person. I like my washed out Umbro drill top that I've had since about 1998. But this is the first time I've looked at it, and I mean, even the sweatshirts, Chris, absolutely look the business. You know. Yeah,
there are a lot. The last time I think we had a whole wardrobe like this was the do you remember the Umbro kit where they took all the blue out?
Yes. Yeah.
That came with all sorts of great training gear and casual gear, and I think wash bags and holdalls and things were pretty smart, and they matched boots with that drop as well. With I think that pre-match top is the highlight.
It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. It should be the kit.
Yeah, it should. It seems a bit cheap and lazy to just blurt out that it should be the home kit, but it should be the home kit.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. They've done a great job. It's inspired by the famous Admiral kit from the early 1980s, of course, and it just looks great. It's the kind of thing that Germany wouldn't shy away from at all with their kits.
Yeah.
And I think it overshadows the home kit a bit. As I say, I sort of like the idea of the home kit anyway, but I think it's unfortunate that it will be the one of the two that's compared to that training top. There is some really good stuff in the overall collection. I think some of the jackets are great. The hooded grey jacket is superb.
Yeah.
And a couple of t-shirts even are just great. Do you know what? Even the t-shirt that's just got a giant crest on it looks brilliant.
Yeah, if you're listening, Nike, and you do want to send a lorry load over.
Yeah, I should point out that we both had a very good relationship with Umbro once upon a time as regards England.
Yes, yeah, we did. And I should also point out that we're both extra larges because we're carrying a little holiday weight.
Yes, if only it were the 1X.
We'll take them both separately and go slightly more forensic in them. The home shirt, I think I'm more positive than you. I've seen one in the flesh.
Okay.
And I think it looks a lot better in the flesh. I've always liked a clean England shirt. I don't want all sorts on it. And I quite like the fact that this England shirt has actually got an incredible amount of detail when you go close up to it. But when you are watching on TV, when you're further away, it looks really clean, really pure. And I personally, I think it's quite classy. I think it's as good as an England kit is ever going to get because you are limited with your options slightly. I'm not a massive fan of the plunge collar, if I'm honest, but I don't mind it, and I'm a bit more positive than you. But now we've both had a say on the home shirt, let's talk about the away shirt, Chris.
For me, it's very much the classic England away shirt designed for 2018.
Yeah,
I think it's really good. And again, it may just be the photography or the angles of the shoots that they've done that make it stand out a bit more to me than the home one, and I'm willing to reserve judgment on that. I love the detailing on the red. And, as always with red England away shirts, going back to the very beginning of red England away shirts, I love the contrast of the red shirt and the white badge. It just stands out like a sore thumb. And actually on the home and away kit, the badge is massive as well, by the way. And it works really well. And that little bit of detail that it's a little bit more obvious on the away kit. And I think that just edges it for me. And I'm more positive about the red than the white on this occasion. Not always the case.
Well, the detailing, the thing is, the both shirts are essentially the same. The detailing is the same.
Yeah.
But obviously on the white kit, you don't get any sort of variation in the shading or any sort of graduation to the striations on it. And on the red shirt, it really does. I mean, I've not seen the red shirt in the flesh. I have seen the white shirt. So, I'm on record now as saying that I think the home shirt looks a lot better in the flesh. I can only imagine so does the red shirt too. And what I particularly like, Chris, is the lines down the shoulder. Where they have gone with a deeper red for the arms, but the actual lines down the shoulder really do look, from the pictures I've seen, classy. And red socks. If England are playing in a red away shirt, then I want them in red socks. And there's quite, not everybody agrees with that. Not everybody agrees with that, to say the very least. But I think this is, since Nike have taken over, taking the training kit out of it altogether, I think these are the strongest kits we've had. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I think, unfortunately, a large portion of that period has been taken up with that template.
Yeah.
Which, for me, is responsible for some inferior England shirts. But it was the same for pretty much everybody else as well. So I'm glad to see the back of it. And I think the England shirts, in fact, the England kits benefit from its absence.
Yeah, I'm quite prepared for this to blow up in my face when this gets used as a template for every major Nike nation around the world, but I don't think it will.
No,
but
maybe it will, but it won't. The shoulders and the contrasting socks have gone.
Yeah, this feels like a kit that has been designed for the English national team, whereas the last night kit in particular was it's just not a very good kit. There's nothing different about it. There's nothing that separates it. But B, seeing so many nations rock up in exactly the same kit, just with the different colours on it really destroys it in terms of having any sort of affection. And affection for kits is a funny thing, because like one of my favourite England kits of all time, Chris, was worn in what some would argue was one of our worst eras, which was the Graham Taylor kit.
Yeah.
With the little V-neck with the little England badge in the middle of the V-neck.
Yeah.
Which was from, I think, was it 91 to 93, possibly?
I think the first England kit I actually owned at the time that it was being used.
Yeah. So it's not about performance in these kits where you draw an affinity from them. You want them to be individualistic to you, don't you? You want them to be something that you can define as, this is the English kit. And I think a pretty good job overall. I think, Chris, let's stick a mark on it, right? So that when this comes around and we're doing this in 2 years, we can listen back to this and see. So we'll do it exam style, A, B, C, D, and I'm going to go for, I think the home kit is I think it's a B, and I think the away kit is a B+.
I will go for C for the home kit.
Yeah.
Again, with the caveat that I've not seen it in the flesh yet, and a probable B for the away kit.
And we're both going A star for training kit, aren't we?
Absolutely.
A star if we could. New section done. We our question this week that we're going to have a sort of bit of a discussion round is something that I have feelings and views on, Chris.
Yes.
As you know. The Premier League are now looking at a winter break, and there is now an openness to try and create an opportunity for a winter break, certainly, if nothing else. And what we're looking at here is, what does this mean for the national team? What does this mean for England? I'm going to go on record straight from the off and say absolutely nothing, but I'm going to go over to you, Chris, for a little bit of levity before I take things too far.
Yeah. No, square root of sod all is what it means for the England team. And I think, there's the very obvious assumption, and the thing that people go to, including myself, often without really thinking about it, is, won't they just play lucrative friendlies anyway? I think the comments that we've had out of the Premier League managers this winter start to point against that slightly, which I think is a positive. I think they are now talking from a place of genuine concern about the health of the players that they have at their clubs. I think there is a threat that there will be other games played in whatever period that they're looking at. I think at the moment they're looking at a staggered spell off, which maybe will again work against the idea that there'll be lots of friendlies played in that period. But from an England point of view, I think the issue is just that it's not about England, and it's not intended to be, and it never has been intended to be about England, and we'll be told that it is. Just like we were told the Premier League was. And it just really isn't about England at all. Now, it may well be that it's good for players and that it's a good thing for the Premier League as a business. All things that I don't want players to be exhausted or injured because of too many games in any period of time. But I certainly don't care about the quality of the Premier League, and I certainly don't have any time for anybody who decides that the quality of a league as a whole falls under some arbitrary bar and that they won't watch it anymore. I think the Premier League is a compelling product, even if it does get a little bit crazy over the winter period. And actually, we're starting to get the first drips of confirmation that any winter break, staggered or otherwise, won't particularly impact the Christmas period, which is the the busy time where it gets a bit nuts anyway. What I will say in terms of a devil's advocate is that if one or two key England players are benefiting from this because they're not put through their paces to the same extent, then maybe that's a good thing when it comes round to tournament time for England. But I think as someone who is against the idea of a winter break in general, largely on the basis that I enjoy it as a supporter and I think that it's important for football culture that we don't have that time off in England. For me, the big question is whether the benefit to the players, to the quality, to the England team add up to enough to justify the loss to our football traditions and cultures in this country. For me, it's not enough. But I think the only way I would ever start taking the benefits seriously would be if you could convince me of the rationale and intentions behind it. And I think they're as likely to be commercial as they are about the England team.
Yeah. Right. I am not against the idea of a winter break. I am not against the idea of all players, international and not, having some sort of staggered break to increase the quality of football and avoid various injury concerns that come from the intensity of that time period. What I am against is there's twofold, really. There are so many other reasons why English football suffers internationally and why English football in generally, while a completely compelling product, is one of the reasons it is compelling is because it is still so prone to error, still so prone to mistake from defenders, goalkeepers, etc., and can be tactically naive. We still have barriers to coaching that are absolutely ridiculous. We still have huge problems getting young players into football teams. We still have a massive issue with the structure of our leagues, whereby after the Premier League, we have 3 other professional leagues that are absolute nutjobs with far too many games in them. It should be 5 tiers of 20. And English football we should be proud of the fact that we are the only country in the world who can support 100 fully professional football teams. But we can. No problem whatsoever. And we should just do it. Having 13 days off in January is not going to make any sort of lasting change. All it's going to do is make life at the very top end of league football easier for people like Pep Guardiola. But the other side that really gets my goat on this is that we've come round to this way of thinking where playing football is an issue. Playing football is the problem. We rest players for the Europa League because there's too much football. We rest players for the League Cup because there's too much football. We rest players from the FA Cup because there's too much football. We rest players for games against the top 3, and we rest players for games against the bottom 3 because there's too much football. We rest players at Christmas anyway because they can't all play every single game through the Christmas period. We are coming round to a world where the very top level of football, they want it to be 1 game a week played in, I don't know, some form of European Super League where there are no other concerns, no other cup competitions. Everybody can allegedly be at the peak of their fitness from 1 week to the next. We can stagger the games over a weekend at different times so every game can be televised. And there are going to be people who actively want that to happen. And this is just another subtle indicator that that's the way we're going. And as I said, it's not the winter break I have an issue with. It's not the taking the time off. But in this question, it doesn't make any difference to English football, because if you look directly at English football and look at who is arguably our best and brightest player, Harry Kane, having 13 days off in January is not going to change the fact that he is going to play in every Spurs game he is fit for the rest of January, February, March, April, May. And he will play a full 90 minutes because his club hasn't got a replacement for him who's anything like adequate. So he's still going to play the same amount of football. And I don't know about your work, Chris, but in the summer, I'm not thinking, well, I'm working much better because I had a week and a half in Tenerife in January. It doesn't work like that. It's just that football has used it as this catch-all thing, as this sort of very easy reason, this blanket to throw all our problems under. Well, we don't have a winter break like they do in Germany, like they do in Spain, like they do in Italy. Yeah, but there are so many more systemic problems that a country like Germany has actively sought to remove that we still have in place that need breaking down and starting again before we even look at a winter break. And I'm sorry for ranting, Chris, but it's just it annoys me because it has become this blanket thing.
Yeah. Germany, Spain, Italy are poor comparisons, aren't they? Because that's where you really start to see where the real differences are. The fact that they have a winter break is for me neither here nor there. I was going to use Harry Kane as an example, and I was thinking while I was starting to formulate my argument that it was a little bit harsh on Pochettino to single out Kane, because I don't recall Pochettino's specific comments about it. So I'll take Raheem Sterling and Guardiola, who has really been at the vanguard of the argument for this, certainly over this winter. I don't want Sterling to be ran into the ground. I don't want him to be exhausted or get injured, or to arrive in Russia a broken young man. What I want is for the responsibility for how many games he plays, how often he plays, the intensity he plays at, where he's used as a substitute or brought off in the middle of a game, towards the end of a game. I want that to be Guardiola's responsibility. He has a huge squad there, and that's not an anomaly within the Premier League anymore. Manage your players.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. That's why you have a squad. Fixture congestion just doesn't stack up to me, I'm afraid. And I know it's something that's kind of an assumed truth within Premier League football and amongst supporters now. But it's only fixture congestion if you play the same team every week. And, how rare is that, really?
Yeah.
So if I absolutely recognise Guardiola as concerns, and I recognise the other concerns. I think it's almost every Premier League manager has mentioned it now this winter. I get it. But it's within their power to manage their way through that. And it may be challenging, but that's the whole point.
I am anti a winter break, but even I'm looking at this. We're recording this in 2018. Christmas 2017 was poorly managed in terms of the fixtures.
Just to be clear, it was poorly timed as well. There's a fair amount of bad luck in the fixture list in this year in particular. And
Sky were sort of pretty boastful of putting on, I think they had a game every day for, was it 12 days, something like that, Premier League game, etc. I can understand managers moaning about that, but Chris, you're exactly right. Manage your squad. Don't play the same players week in, week out. And it all comes back to my argument about all the other barriers we have within the English game. We want them to manage their squads, which means giving other players opportunities. And who knows, you might have a young English player, Chelsea, Man City. I can't point that finger at Man United because they would play the player. But you may have a young English player who can come in and not only do a job in that period, give you a selection headache because they play really, really well and force their way into your thinking. It's laziness to blame everything on a winter break, and people do, and it drives me mad. Anyway, we better move on to our magnificently named player wall. We thought about that title for a long time, didn't we, Chris?
We did, yeah. I was looking at a wall while we were discussing it.
And we have a player this week that Chris is going to talk about, who I reckon might divide opinion a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. And for no other reason that he's the current England manager. Almost by default. Let's not pretend that it's anything other than that. Gareth Southgate picked up, in the space of 9 years, 57 England caps. He's close to my heart because he started out at Crystal Palace, and then in 1995, Brian Little signed him for Aston Villa. And that was when he permanently switched to a centre-back position, in a back three at the time, as it happens. So he was a favourite of mine for years anyway, and you know, being probably at the height of my England support in the mid-1990s, early to mid-1990s. The penalty miss at Euro 96, as a Villa supporter, only reinforced my commitment to having Gareth Southgate as one of my favourite players at the time. I took it really personally, and I took the abuse that he got very personally. I think a lot of Villa supporters did, really. There was a game early in the 96-97 season when Villa were awarded a penalty, and there was a genuine will in the stadium for Southgate to take that penalty. Thankfully, he didn't do it. But the connection between a Villa player, I think I'm right in saying he's the most capped while at Villa England player, which, you know, up until a few years ago, Villa had supplied more England internationals than any other club. I assume Spurs have gone past that now, as well as maybe another. But watching a Villa player play for England used to mean a lot to me, and frankly, it would be a miracle now, and it would mean a lot to me again. But when he moved to Middlesbrough in 2001, and the way he did it and the way he spoke about that move, it went down really badly. And I think for Villa supporters, that left a bit of a sour taste. And then the way he's had it feels a bit harsh to say he's had a middling management career, because so much of it's just been Gareth Southgate, the FA man, hasn't it? You know, the Middlesbrough side, he's been an England coach. And because he walked backwards into the England job, I think people forget how good a player he was. And, you know, this isn't a mainstay England player, but he was always there or thereabouts. I think the way I look at his England career is that despite competition from arguably the best sizable group of central defenders we've ever had, he rarely barged them out of the way, but he was always a reliable option. And he got better as he got older as well. And he fitted in perfectly for England because he was a proper defender. He was good in the air. He had top draw defensive instincts and reading of the game. And he was great with his feet as well. And as a backup to Sol Campbell or a backup to Rio Ferdinand, absolutely adequate.
Yeah. I think the key word from what you've said about Gareth Southgate that I always take is reliable. It seems a funny thing to say from a player with such a high profile moment to his name where he missed the penalty, but my personal philosophy on penalty shootouts is that you almost have to remove them from all forms of football when doing any sort of analysis, because they're a set of
we do
circumstances. That now. There are a set of circumstances that you can't recreate, or I don't think you can particularly train for them either, because you can take a million penalties, but there's nothing you can't. It's that pressure cooker environment, and very classy on the ball, much better passer than people gave him credit for. Natural leader, as being evidenced by his move into management, and he nearly scored the best ever goal from an England defender of all time in a game against, I think, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Do you remember the fateful Hong Kong Select game? That I think, was it Hong Kong Select? It may not have been, actually, that we won 3-0 and Gaza scored a lovely little side foot goal. Might be Hong Kong Select. I can't remember. It was just before Euro 96. And he basically picks the ball up just over the halfway line, just accelerates past a couple of players, and just as he's about to take the shot on from the edge of the box, and it's all there for him. I mean, what a goal this is going to be. It just takes a terrible bobble and he flashes it over the bar. Still does pretty well, the shot, but it goes over. And in a funny sort of way, even though that was obviously, a pre-tournament friendly, I sometimes think we'd look back better at his England career if he'd have scored that goal, because sometimes I think all a player really needs is one moment, and their whole career sort of suddenly seems far more favourable.
Do you remember his England goals? I can't call them to mind.
He scored a header from a corner against. I can't. Oh, no, is the answer, Chris. Yeah. As you can tell, I'm struggling. But at the end of the day, I completely understand why you're putting him in there, and I think it might raise a few eyebrows that we're putting him up there before a Sol Campbell or a Rio or someone like that. But I honestly think he falls into the underrated range now, and he's sort of being defined by being England manager rather than being Gareth Southgate, bloody good footballer.
Yeah.
I tell you who's a bit like that now, with probably, arguably, about 4 generations, is people forget how good Gary Lineker was as a footballer because of what he's done since his footballing days. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And Gareth Southgate's sort of starting to fall into that category. Who was his best partner beside him for England, do you think? Who complimented him best?
For England? I think that's really difficult, because I think he was similar to the better players. I think he was similar. I think similar in his style of play to Campbell, similar in his style of play to Ferdinand. So I think I'm going to try and get away with a technicality and hope that they did it at the same time for England and just pick out Hugo Ekiong.
Fair enough.
I'm being silly there, but genuinely his best partner was Hugo.
Yeah. On that Villa-based bombshell. We shall leave it. We shall see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye.